Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Hello, Facebook. We are live and we are back again. I am your host and the founder and president of Her Day Conference, Alexis Waddell. And tonight is night two of our Facebook Live series for women who grieve the loss of their mother. And tonight we have an amazing special guest. But before we start, I want to just shout out some people. There's my father-in-law. Hey, hi. Oh, that's my mother-in-law using my father-in-law's phone. Hi, everyone. Please feel free to share this. We're going to have an amazing night tonight, just like last night. And if you were with us last night, I'd like to say thank you for joining us. And I hope that you found last night as fruitful as I found it. It was amazing. Hi, hi, hi. Oh, hi. I love you too. Hi, everyone. I just want to give a second for everyone to come in. And while we do that, I have an agenda here that I'm going to use tonight because last night I didn't use it and there were some things that I forgot. Most importantly, I forgot to shout out our Her Day board. Our board consists of three amazing women. Uh, Jeanette Ponce, she's amazing. Tanika Gordine and Melinda Audige. And I just forgot to shout you ladies out, and I'm sorry. And I love you all. There are amazing board for Her Day. We are a nonprofit organization. We are 501c3, and these ladies offer their opinions and they help us put these amazing things together. So I wanted to shout you out. And hi, Tanika. I also, like, now it's our board. Great. I wanted to recap yesterday. I wanted to say something. I know that people kept saying, "Oh, Alexis, she's always so joyous." I just want you all to know that, I was not always this way. I was, when I was going through the early process of grieving my mother, who passed away in 2008 suddenly due to cardiomyopathy. Before I planned Her Day or started Her Day, I was not like this. I was like many of you. I was still grieving. I was still very upset, and I didn't have the joy of the Lord. It was a process. So I know people kept saying that, and I didn't want you to think that this is just how I was, and that I'm like this special, like inhumane person. No, I'm a human. Okay, I was crying. I did a lot of things, and some of this I wanted just to share with you tonight. Some of the things that helped me get to a place where I am joyous. Okay, some of the things, of course, I prayed. I prayed. There were days that I couldn't necessarily articulate and formulate the proper words, but I was just like, God, help me. Just help Jesus. I have an amazing church. Those people at church prayed for me. Intercessors prayed for me hard and long. Many times I had friends, I had support. I went to therapy. I did whatever it took because I was desperate to get the heaviness of grief off of my life. It did get to a point as time went on, as days went on, that I was determined, like, well, I'm still here. My mom is gone, and is this what the rest of my life is going to feel like? It was like a doom, and I was like, that's horrible to live like this and to wake up like this every day, feeling like a piece of me was missing and gone, and like my skin was tore off, and I'm just walking around in the earth, and everything hurts, and everything you say, and then everything I do, and I knew that I could not live the rest of my life like that. And so, like I said, I was determined to do whatever it is in my power that I could do. And like I said, God played a major role in that because, like I said yesterday, he said, even this, I will use this for my glory. So even in planning her day, months, maybe about 10 months after my mom passed away, that I thought I was planning for other people to help other people, her day was helping me. Even on our first conference, when we were all there and there were 65 women there, and as the day was going by, and I was like, this is helping me. This is good for me. Even sharing my story was therapeutic. So that helped me. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm not just like superhuman and I'm always joyous. This was a process. Just please know that. In addition to that, I have to acknowledge this because I realized this a couple of days ago. That I had my mother, when she passed away, she had a dog. She had a dog, and at the time, I think the dog was like 3 years old. A little chihuahua. When she died, my grandmother took care of her. Shortly after, a couple of years after, about 4 years later, my sister passed away. And because of the tragic way that my sister died, my grandmother could no longer take care of the dog. So I adopted the dog. So now I inherit this dog, right? And she became like an emotional support animal for me, but I didn't realize that until a few weeks ago. So I've had this dog now for a few years, and she's still with me, and I love her so, and all my friends know Sarah. That's the dog. But I just wanted to say, there was a time, one of my coworkers, she lost her mom. She was an only child, and she didn't have a lot of relatives that lived in New Jersey. And I suggested, why don't you get a dog? You should get a dog. This dog has blessed me. Dogs are amazing, And I was not a dog person, and I did not want another responsibility. But this dog has been amazing. So I don't know how many people out there have dogs or emotional support animals, but they definitely, that also helped me for my grieving and the loss of my sister as well, and my grandmother. So I wanted to acknowledge those things, okay? And prayer and therapy. And yes, once I did get to a place where I felt like I was okay, I dealt with a little bit of guilt. It was hard for me to admit that I feel good today. It took me years to say, no, that's mine. That's what I've been praying for. When you pray to God for healing and for deliverance and to feel good, and He finally gives it to you, claim it. It's yours. Do not feel guilty about the days that you feel strong. Don't feel guilty about the days that you feel like you're okay, because that's yours. And that is the thing that you've been praying for. So when you get it, soak in it. Rest in it. Receive it. Claim it. Say it. Yes, I feel good today. Right? So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Because I know everybody kept saying yesterday, let's do so joyous. I am not always like this. I wasn't like this. This was a process. I am not the lady I am today that I was the day that my mother passed away. So thank you all for joining us again tonight. Yesterday was awesome with Dr. Joma. She talked about some of the women who lost their moms during COVID. She shared her story. She talked about trauma. On tonight, so that was awesome. Tonight we have another special guest, and she's amazing. Her name is Dr. Zarita, and our producer is going to bring her on the screen right now. There she is.
Yay! Good evening.
Beautiful in her yellow. I love this shoulders. I love that. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Dr. Zarita is amazing. I'm not going to read her bio because just like I did yesterday, but her bio is on our Facebook page. It is very long. It is very impressive. She is a doctor in the mental health field. And tonight she's going to share with us some things. So Dr. Zarita, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. What an exciting time.
And I know tonight you're going to be talking to us, to the women about to the women who maybe they didn't have that picture perfect relationship with their mothers and some traumas of growing up with the loss of your mother. So please, can you share your story first?
Sure. My mother died when I was 13 years old. But just as a little back history, my mother was the middle child of 3 children. Our family, she was actually born in Barbados. And she and my dad, and we lived right next door to my grandmother, who is also, of course, from Barbados. And so when we were growing up, my mom, all that I can remember from my early years, my mother had seizures, and my father had broken down the door, and he beat up my mom. And I was very young during the time, but I remember seeing it, and I remember the policeman coming and picking me up, and asking me what happened, and I told him that my dad broke down the door and beat my mommy up. And life after that was very, very different. My mom was a very loving woman. She taught me everything about numbers and letters and writing. By the time I went to school at 5, I went right into first grade because I could read. And, she took us in the yard and taught us about the constellations and things like that. And, but because of her drinking, she had a drinking problem, which I believe could have been something that maybe was in her, but it really got magnified after my dad's, abuse. And then she went to the hospital and she had a blood clot and she didn't know if she was going to live. But during the years, even though I understood how wonderful she was in regards to how she took care of us the best she could, we were on relief, which was back in the day welfare, because I was born in 53. And so during the 50s and stuff, they had relief. So, but she did what she could do, and she taught us so much. She was artistic and all. Oh man, she could play the piano. She could speak Spanish, all of this. But with all of that she had that was good, there was another side because of her need, I think, for approval from her mom. Her stepfather was abusive to her. I literally saw him when she wanted to go to a dance. He was a musician, and she begged him, and she got down on her knees, and I literally saw him kick her in the face, and she went into seizures. And just one thing led to another. And so as much good as she wanted to do, that other side of the drinking and what have you was just challenging. And since I was the oldest, I was responsible for my sister and, taking care of the house and cooking. And by 7, I was doing my own hair. By 10, I was going food shopping and taking care of my sister and her and what have you. And through that time, she just got worse. My grandmother put her in a mental institution, and we'd have to go visit her, and she would make these little purses, out of the leather and the things that they used to make them. And it was hard because in school, the kids in the neighborhood had heard about my mother. They didn't understand. And I think during that time, a lot of people didn't understand about epilepsy and seizures and, then with the drinking on top of it. And so when she went to a bar and if there was a fight or something and she was involved, then I had to deal with the kids at school who said, your mother was at the Red Coach and your mother cut a man. And, whether she did or not, I don't know, but all of that. And so those were challenges I had to face going to school, neighborhood kids, and the things that they would say. So as much as she was a wonderful mom in one regard, I still had to deal with the side of her that was stressful for me. Growing up, school was like the place I went to get some relief. And, you work hard in school. My grandmother insisted that we went to Catholic school. And, the coursework and stuff was a challenge. But I just put my nose in and did the best that I could. When she died, well, there's more. When my mom, through the latter years before she passed away, there were men that she had met. We had one man who my sister and I were hoping that he would be our new dad. His name was Charles, and he was really, really nice. He had kids, like, a little older than us, a little younger than us, and we thought that was great. But then the last man that she was with was not good. He wasn't good to her, and he wasn't good to us. He was abusive to me. He literally beat me in the street, and my mother was too drunk to know. And I don't want to be too graphic, but there was a sexual abuse and that kind of thing. And you don't know, because now I don't ever remember my father being in the home.
Mhm.
So how do you know how to, live with a man in your house? You don't know. And so what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and then you find that maybe this is not right, but you don't have anybody to talk to, you don't have anybody to tell, that this thing is going on. And again, my mother was drinking, and a lot of time she was oblivious to what was going on. So being able to manage every day and have no one to talk to or to tell, that's safe, because back then you kids are seen but not heard. You keep quiet, you don't get into adult conversations, and you certainly don't discuss adult things. So it was very difficult. So when the last thing I remember is we didn't have a phone. I went next door to my grandmother's house. She used to take care of kids. At this time she had already passed away, and I was over there helping my grandfather, with the kids that he had. This was going to be his last weekend. When I went back to my house, because my sister came home from school this day and said that mommy, I don't think mommy's feeling well. And I went into the room is what I would say smelled like death. It smelled like decay. There was just, she had a urine pot in there, and she was in the bed. She had blood dried around her mouth because evidently she had seizures, and she must have bit her tongue, and she was not responsive. I ran back next door to tell my grandfather. He says, well, just call for the police or the ambulance. And I didn't even know how to use a phone. I was 13 years old. I was a very young, immature 13-year-old. Still played with dolls, sucked my fingers. Was just a kid. And I went over to the house, and when I got there, he said, just call the police or whatever. And I didn't even know how to use the phone. And one of the women, I'll never forget it, she was picking up her children, and she showed me how to dial. And when the ambulance came, I was hoping that they would put her like on a stretcher and cover her up and all of that, because we're in the Brooklyn and we're in the brownstone and we were on the second floor. So they had to bring her down the steps. They put her in a chair, like one of those. It's a chair. It's like instead of a stretcher, they put her on a chair. They didn't cover her up. She looks a mess, and they put her in the ambulance. And once they got her in the ambulance, she released her urine, and I knew then that that was the end. I just knew. I was like, I don't think she's going to make it, because all the other times that never happened. And so we get to the hospital. They take her in, and they put her in a room, and they say, well, we'll take care of her. So I go home, and now I'm in a house with no heat, no electricity, and no food. And so we go next door. My sister and I go next door to my grandmother's house. My grandfather's now gone. I have two twin cousins that are there with their mom, but that's a whole other story, whole other situation. And we're there. And so we're there home alone. My sister loves to play outside. She's running the streets. I went to the store and all this kind of stuff. Next morning, Sunday morning, we get a call, that not a call, somebody comes to the house. And next thing I know, they're saying I have to go to the hospital. So I get up, I get dressed, I go to the hospital. And where I left her, she wasn't there. I looked on the board and I saw her name, and I knew that that means she died. And so when the doctor comes to see me, he says, well, your mother had a lot of things going on. She was anemic. She had leukemia. She had diabetes. He named like 7 different things that she had. And I just looked at him and I said, she's dead, isn't she? And he said, yes, she died. And I had to walk home from the hospital, not knowing where my father was. I didn't know who to tell. One lady, that her children they would come to my grandmother's house. She lived up the street, and I went to her house and I told her that my mother died and I don't know what to do. And she said, just go home. You're going to get some help. And go home, and I tell my aunt that my mom died, and she's screaming and she's hysterical. And it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where my dad is. I can't even call him because I don't know how to use a phone, and I don't know his number. But my hope was is that if they found my dad, that he would come and he would help us, that he would take us. When he left us, the last time I remember him leaving us, what he said to me was that I love you and I'll always, be here for you and all of that. And through all the abuse and all the things that I went through, I always felt that when he came, he was going to be my knight in shining white armor, and he was going to help us, and he was going to be my dad, and my life was going to be so much better with him. And unfortunately, it was not. It was worse, because he had the issues he had. He had remarried. He had two other children. They lived in an apartment. We went to live with him, and it was just a challenge. So every 2 years after that, we lived somewhere else. We lived with him for a couple of years. Then we went upstate and lived with my aunt and uncle, which was my mother's brother and his wife. We had 18 of us. There were foster kids. There were other family members, my twin cousins. They were living there, and it was a really big house and what have you. But then, when it was good times, it was great. But when it was bad times, it was horrible, And then from there, they sent me back down to the city, went back to the city to live with my dad for a few short months, turned 18 and said, next time I come home, I'll be packing my bags and leaving your house. And he said, fine, hung up on me, you know. So you have a question.
That's a lot. And I know I use this word a lot, but that's traumatic. I would say that's trauma. Even the details of the story, that the way that you tell it, the way that you can remember the infinite details. And I asked Dr. Ijoma yesterday, can you talk a little bit about the traumas of life, how they still affect us today, how if we don't address them and we don't get some type of help, how they kind of pile on top of each other.
Yes, they do.
Can you talk about that? Because that's a lot. And did you carry that into like adulthood? Did you get help, or can you just talk
sure.
About
that? Through the years, what happens is, and this is something that I found out, and it was later in life that I realized it. When you live in an environment where you're dealing with abuse, you're dealing with alcoholism. For me, I began to dream about what I want to be. I began to dream about, where I want to be in life. And I didn't even know that much. But I call it la la land, but it's a safe place because you couldn't really face all of this stuff and be able to make it. I used to always see myself in a dark room. And if you think of yourself in a bedroom, the lights are off, but your door it's cracked and you see a little light in the hallway. I used to see myself in this dark room and that light in the hallway. And I always would say, if I can get to that light, I'm going to be okay. If I get, and I would just see myself there and say, I just got to get to that light and I'm going to be okay. Because what happens is I used to always give this story. It's like, my mother died when I was 13. My dad wasn't there. And, every 2 years we lived somewhere else. And I had to get sick of my own story to really be able to handle and get better about life. And it was always the excuse for not making it, for failing, or what I believe to be failing. My mother said, get your education is that's something that nobody can take from you. So I always strove to learn and get my education and what have you. When I turned 18 and I left my father's house, I lived with an aunt, I lived with my grandmother, I lived in Harlem, taking care of kids, just trying to, live my life. But the words kept coming back. And all of this stuff, every time something happened, all of the reasons why this is not working and why this is happening to me were all piled up. Now, Dr. Anita Phillips did this podcast with Dr. Darius Daniels, and she gave such insight to this that I will never forget it. And I've written it down and I want to share it with people because we don't realize. She said, every time you have something trauma, something that happens in your life, she said, it's like a bomb and you put it in the closet. But every time something comes after that bomb, you take that bomb, you throw it in the closet. Another thing comes and it's trauma to your life. You're suffered through something. That trauma ignites the trauma in the closet. So now you got two bombs blowing up. You take that bomb and you put that in the closet. And every time you come, more and more stuff in the closet, but every time you have a situation that's hurtful and something that you're dealing with, all those bombs go off. And so it makes it more challenging to deal with. Don't you ever wonder sometimes why everything seems to be fine? One little thing will happen and boom, 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 boom. It's like everything blows up. It's because we haven't dealt with the root. We haven't dealt with those bombs. So every new bomb causes a major explosion. How do I deal with that? How do you deal with it? For me, coming to know the Lord as my Savior was the earliest step. That was the biggest step. I was 20 years old. It was 1973. And I gave my life to Jesus Christ, not really knowing what that all meant. I never read a Bible before. I got a Bible, and my boyfriend at the time said, read the Bible, don't paraphrase, no chapter and verse. So you tell a Catholic that, boy, we're in that Bible, and we got to know all this stuff, and we got to live it line by line. But it wasn't a bad thing. So I came to know the Lord then, but it didn't stop. It was like 6 months. And I could feel the pressure again of my life and all of this stuff just piling on, because no matter how much you try to move forward, you got all this baggage you're carrying, and it's very difficult to move forward. I got filled with the Holy Ghost, which was huge. Okay. Because that I came up, oh,
Huge.
it is huge. Oh my gosh. Now listen, I'm a Catholic. I don't know nothing about what Pentecostals know. Okay. All I know is on that all night prayer, I was burdened. I was crying, and the Lord said, give it to me. And I saw myself giving him this big old box. When that box left my hands and went to his hands, I began to praise God. Next thing I know, the tongues started coming. But beyond the tongues, I felt strength. I felt like, you know what? I can make it. I can get through this next leg of my life. And then as I learned the word and as I spent time in prayer, and when I got married, I lived in Toms River. And my pastor was Dr. David C. Graham and Evangelist Shirley Graham. And when I tell you the teaching that I received in that place and the example, of you pray and you believe God, because as they were growing as pastors, we were growing as members. And they had a seminar on prayer, and Sister Marlena Simmons, she taught this thing, and they went down to the basics of the Our Father. Okay. And when I tell you, it changed my whole life, and I began to seek God in a new way. And I said, I need time to pray. And so I lived across the street from the church, and I asked them, can I go over and do a 6 a.m. prayer? I thought that 6 a.m. prayer was going to be for the community. All the people in the community are going to come in, and we're going to pray together before we go to work, and we're going to give God glory and bless the Lord. And how many know that didn't happen quite like that? People came, initially, but after a while, it was just me and God. During that time is when God showed me who he was and who I was. He said to me one time, he said, there's a line that every Christian comes to. He said, and when you reach that line, you're saved, you love God, things are wonderful. Praise the Lord, hallelujah. He said, but there's another step that you need to take and become intimate with me. And he said, when you cross there, I will tell you things that you wouldn't know. I will show you things that you could never see. And you will, it's like our personal relationship. And I remember waiting and thinking, do I want to cross over? Because I realized that commitment is more than just saying I'm saved and I go to church and everything's lovely. It's a greater commitment. And crossing over that gave me what I needed. It was the beginning of a journey of healing. It was a beginning of a journey of revelation of who I was, who he was, what he wanted for my life. He showed me what it meant for him to be my father. I didn't have a good relationship with my father. And a lot of girls don't. They've done studies that girls who have had good relationships with their dad, when you start talking about their dad, they're gushing, oh, my dad was that. And then girls who didn't, it would be crying and breaking down. There were only two reactions, either, he's a wonderful father, or, oh my God. Okay. And my relationship with my dad was not great. He didn't like me. He liked my younger sister. What could I say? So Father God said, look, I'm your daddy God. He says, I'm not your earthly father. I love you. And I want for you the best. You won't ask, but you need to ask. And it began a journey of healing and relationship with Father God. Along with that, as I got older, the Lord told me that I needed to go to school for counseling. And I only knew of one school in Edison, Faith Fellowships Church. They had a school for Christian counselors. And I went there. Through the process of my learning was also a process of healing. God just helped me to see and understand some things about what had happened and how it was affecting me. And I was able to let go of some things, deal with some things. Because listen, if you don't want to deal with it, it's not going to get you further along. It's going to hinder you. I remember going back to college, upstate New York, because my aunt sent me down to New York, and my sister and I were separated, and I didn't see her for many years after that. And that's why the color purple, I was telling you earlier today,
Yeah.
that movie impacted me on many, many levels. But I didn't get to see my sister anymore, and I didn't know where she was. And my mother had charged me, don't get separated from your sister. You have to be there. You have to stay together, kind of thing. But in any case, when I'm in school, I had to learn. I learned about some of the issues that I had. I had to make a decision. So when I went upstate New York to go back to college, I made a list of really what I wanted, what I thought I was. You have this idea, oh, I can sing, I can dance, I can perform, I'm going to model, I'm going to do all this stuff. And then it was like, now who are you for real, Zarita? And I had to write down, and this was something I decided to do. It's like I wrote down, this is really who I am. Yeah, I can sing a little bit, but I don't know if I'll ever be a model. I don't know. But I began to really deal with who I knew me to be. And then I made a column of who I wanted to be and where I wanted to go. And then I started the journey of preparing to do that.
And then did this attribute to the healing process through trauma?
Yes, that was my way of being able to get through the trauma. I had to put aside what was, in the past. I had to let go of that. And I think that's the hardest thing because we're so used to living with it. It's like if you wear, I don't know, we're ladies on the line. Well, if you wear, what is it, Spanx or something, back then you had to wear corsets and girdles, okay? And then you get ready and you get dressed and you don't put that on. It's like, wait, something's missing. All right. It's like I've been carrying this thing so long. It's kept me kind of in this bind. And it is a bind. It's kept me that way. I need to be free of that. And then what am I going to do if I don't put that on? It's like I don't feel like myself, So you have to find your new way of being you. And that part of that challenge is accepting the things that have kept you bound and saying, I really want to be free of that. It doesn't take away from who my mother was and looking at the good things. If you see a post that I did for my mother on Facebook, you'll see all the positive things that she did. I choose to look to that and know that even though that other stuff was there, look at me now. Because of the good things that she did do, I have gone to school. I'm still in school. I'm doing a second doctorate right now. You know what I'm saying? But all of that was, dealing with that good stuff and realizing that other stuff has its place, but it doesn't have to be my burden. And it doesn't have to be the bag that I carry on my back all the time because there's healing.
So someone just said carrying something so long, it becomes your new normal, right? So how do you break the monotony, right, of the normal? And you say, even though this is normal to me, it's heavy, right? Where do you even start to say?
Acknowledging that it is heavy and the weight that I'm carrying is based on whatever that thing is that I've had in my life so long. You might have to go through a couple of things to really look at it because we have to learn how to kind of, it's in our society today, everything we want quick. Everything has to happen quick. Everything's moving all the time. But these things are processes. It takes time. It's a step-by-step process. When you want to lose weight and you want to change your diet, you can't do it all at one time. I remember one time somebody said, you're supposed to drink 8 glasses of water in a day. And I tried to drink it in one night. Listen, My bladder in the middle of the night, I can hardly walk trying to get to the bathroom. Okay, you can't do this thing all at one time. It's a
Right.
process. You may need help. Most of us need help. We really need help. You need sometimes professionals that can come alongside to help. This is where community comes in. All right. One of the things that Dr. Phillips says is she talks about trauma. And when she talks about trauma, she says that trauma is anything that changes the way you see God, yourself, or the world for the worst. Okay? For the worst. How you look at things now, you don't see it the same way you saw it before. When you deal with trauma, there's a process to get out of that. Just like I talked about the little bombs, those diffusing of the little bombs help you to be able to handle the next big thing that might come. All right. So give me that question again that they asked. This was it the steps?
It becomes the new normal.
Your new normal.
Normal. It becomes your normal. Carrying something so long that it becomes your normal. Like so even the weight of it, the heaviness of it, the grief, just the grief in saying, well, I'm going to live like this forever. I'm going to be miserable forever. And I can honestly say, if I can just say,
sure,
I think that is the difference for me. And I think God gave me this grace because he knew I would need it for this platform. Right. So he did it through me first. Right.
Yes.
Or as an example to say, I don't know, he gave me enough because I pleaded with him to say, okay, I don't have to live the rest of my life like this because I don't want to, Lord. I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but I don't want to die today, right? I don't want to die today. And I know I'm going to be here. I can't do it like this, Lord. I can't do it like this heavy, like this death over me like this. I can't do it with this severely broken heart like this. This is not living. I can't breathe. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I had that determination to still honor my mother, miss her, love her, but I want to be able to get to a place where I can talk about her and not break down and cry. I want to get to a place where I can look at her picture and remember, even with doing the marketing, our marketing pictures, they're scrapbooks, memories. Those memories are ours. I want to be able to remember my mother and like laugh and be like, or be able to tell my daughter about it. She never got to meet my daughter or my husband. And I want to be able to talk about my mother and not break down or just talk about her, because some people can't talk about them without crying. It's too sad. It's too heavy. I miss her too much. But I knew that I was like, Lord, I'll go on because you want me to go on, but I can't do it like this. I can't serve you like this. I can't go to work like this. I can't do her day like this. I can't stand before these people and lie. If you are going to heal me, you need to heal me so I can tell them that it's possible and that it's real. And I'll tell them that you did it. And I'll tell them that it's attainable. And I believe he gave me a grace to do it. And I believe he did it in me first. So it is attainable. And I think what it was a desire that I had more than anything. And I really kind of pictured it like, enemy, I will not let grief or death stop me from acknowledging my mother. She was amazing, you know? And I'm going to talk about her. And on Mother's Day, if I want to, I'm going to acknowledge her. And I'm going to go to church on Mother's Day. And I'm going to acknowledge the women who mother me that are on the earth. My Pastor Mary, my mother-in-law, just Mother John at church, the sweetest lady. She always buys me vitamins, you know, and I don't know why, but I feel mothered when she does that. That's something my mother would do. My aunt who showed up when it was time to get married and mothered me through a time where I felt like I can't get married. Like my mom isn't here. And my aunt just showed up for everything. I'm in there trying on dresses and I come out and it was like, is this the dress? I said, yes. She said, your aunt just paid for it. Stuff like that. My point is, if I was not in a healthy place of this, right? I would not have been able to let those people in to mother me through specific occasions and specific times and buy Mother's Day gifts for women that I love that are mothers, right? So it's attainable. But I believe God did that for me so that I can tell women that it is possible. But I was desperate for it. And I still miss my mother. And there are days that I still cry. And none of that changes. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just talk about,
Listen, you're passionate about it, and everyone who's listening and watching that feels that burden and weight needs to know that it's going to be a fight. You're going to have to
it's a
fight.
fight. It's a
Get
fight.
it. Okay, it's a fight. You're gonna have to fight to get it. I was sick of being, I was sick of my own story. I was tired of carrying all this stuff. I wanted to be free. I wanted to live a different kind of normal, and it's an adjustment. I was thinking, I play tennis, and when you play tennis, you hold your racket a certain way. But if you're going to make certain shots, you got to turn that racket and hold it differently. Well, every time I hold it differently, it doesn't feel right. So I want to go back to the other grip. And it's like, my pro says, no, you got to get comfortable holding it a new way so you can make the shots you're trying to make.
Yes.
And if we want to live the life more abundantly that Jesus says that we have, if we want to live in the kingdom of God that he's created right here for us, then we have to look at it and say, you know what? Old things are passed away. I'm about ready to get some new things. And even though it may not feel comfortable, I'm going to work towards that uncomfortable feeling so I can be all that God wanted me to be.
Right.
Because the thing is that we can't fully fulfill what we were destined to do because of the weight and the burden. He said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And one morning I was getting ready to go to 6 a.m. prayer, and I just felt so burdened and depressed. And it was like, oh, I don't know if I can make it. I heard the Holy Spirit yell, cast your cares upon me. And like if I didn't hear him, it was like, cast your cares upon me. By the time I went over to that church, this is what I did literally. Now, I'm a very visual, I'm a physical kind of person. It's like, okay, when I got to that church, it was like, I got, oh my God, upon you. And I'm telling you, every time I took and threw this stuff, I felt better. And then I went to running. And I went to running around the church. And the wind, glory unto our God. When that wind hit me as I'm running, I could feel the burdens just falling off of me, stuff just falling off of me. We have to sometimes do something physical to get the results. When I wanted to understand that Satan was under my feet, I wrote Satan on the bottom of my shoe and started marching around my house. Listen, you got to do what you got to do to get to where you want to go. If it means that you need to get a counselor, you pray and seek the Lord and get yourself a counselor. If it means that you need to get in that word and stay on your face before the Lord, fasting and praying, then you stay on your face, fasting and praying for the Lord. If you need to read some books that will give you some insights to, human and mental and emotional well-being, then you need to get some books. But we have to do the work. It doesn't just come by, oh Lord, I really want you to do this for me. I really do. I believe you, Lord. You can do. It's more. You got to walk by faith. See my work, see my faith. Come on, we can do this. And then it means you're gonna have to give up some stuff. Sometimes we feel good in our self-pity. Sometimes it gives us excuses for not being all that we can be because we don't want to make that effort to do whatever. So it's easier to just say, well, I had this problem and that problem. It's time. It's enough. It's enough. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I acted as a child. It's time for us to grow up now. Now, that doesn't mean, you hear what I'm saying. It's time to say, I don't want to be like this anymore. And whatever it takes, Lord, I want to do it. Okay. We have a song we sing at church called I'm All In. Whatever it takes, I'm all in. It's like, are you all in? Because see, our being all in is going to be for our good.
Yes.
It's going to be for our growth and our development, but it's also going to impact those that are watching, those children out there. Because listen, the behavior that my mother had and the way that she was impacted me. It impacted my sister. My sister does not see my mother like I see my mother. I give my mother a lot of grace and, mercy because I understood some things that my sister didn't see. My sister just thinks she's a crazy woman. And I can understand why she would feel that way because that's what she saw. And so when she was having children, she was making sure that, hey, you're going to do this, 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 and this. You know what I mean? So it impacts our lives. It impacts what we think about ourselves. I think one of the questions that you had originally, what coping skills happened? Let's see. What happened regarding your identity?
Yes.
When you lose your mother?
Yes.
It's like, I didn't even really know who I was because I was trying to be so many things to so many people. I wanted to be a good, daughter to my mom. I wanted to, her legacy. I wanted to represent her well. I wanted to be a good big sister. I wanted to be a good person because, I wanted God to be happy with me. I didn't want him to be mad at me. I wanted my aunt to love me and my uncle because I was living there. I wanted to prove to people that I was wonderful. So, if you asked me to bake a cake, I had to bake you the biggest cake. It had to have 17 layers, all this stuff. But it was all just trying, and I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to do everything right. That's trauma. That's
Mhm.
trauma that was in your life that's
It
pushing you
is.
to be all these things. And God doesn't expect it. When the Bible says, be ye perfect, for I am perfect, I was trying to be perfect. I want to be perfect like you, Lord. I live in a fleshly body. I'm a human being. And when in counseling school, they said, you're not going to be perfect because you're still human. What? God says, I can be perfect. I know I can do it. Fail every time. Fail every time. All right. Had to come to the reality and give myself, hi, you got to give yourself grace sometimes.
Yes.
You got to give yourself a break sometimes. You're trying so hard to prove that you're okay, that you're not okay. And it's like you just have to give yourself a break and say, you know what? Let me just give this up and let me just let God be God and do what you got to do, Father. I'm going to let it go. And sometimes you find yourself picking stuff back up, but it's like, I used to do this seminar called What's Your Bag?
Mm-hmm.
And what I would do is I would go around in the room and everybody had their different pocketbooks. I'd be great. May I take your bag? And I'd take that bag and put it on if it was a little purse or shoulder bag, a backpack, and I'd be loaded down with these bags. And then I go try sitting next to somebody. Oh, can I sit here? Oh, and I got all this baggage. And they're like moving out of the way. They're trying to do all this stuff. But listen, don't we carry baggage? And haven't we met people that it's like there's something about them? I don't know. It's something about them. I can't get with them or something. You don't see all the bags, but they're there along with whatever you're carrying. Everybody's got something they're carrying. You put all that together, you have a lot of confusion. You have a lot of distance. You don't even know what's going on. So it's like you got to come to a point where you say, you know what? Only bag I want. He said, my yoke is easy and my burdens are light. Lord, I'm not trying to carry nothing that's not mine. And whatever is
Yes.
mine or was mine, I cast that care on you. I cast that over to you. And you help me to live this life, to be whole and to be healed. That was one of my goals. I wanted to be whole.
Me
I didn't
too.
want to be fractured.
And I knew I didn't want the death to keep lingering. Somehow
Right.
I adopted all of the negative stuff and the death of it and her heart and how come I didn't know and this and now I'm gonna be like that and I couldn't and I knew that I was praying and I'm like, wait a minute. Even when it got to a part where I started to feel better because I was open for it, I was expecting it. I was looking for it. I'm like, okay, I've been praying about this. I'm looking for these good feelings. When they started to come, Dr. Zarita, honestly, I started to feel guilty because my sister wasn't there. And, so I tried to stay in the sadness with her and the heaviness with her, or I didn't really speak about how I was starting to feel better as time went on. Okay.
Yes.
But to God to minister to me, like, this is what you asked for. This is what I gave you. Why would you highlight what do you know what I mean? Like God had to minister to me and say, no, you celebrate when you acknowledge that I've healed you and no, you don't feel the heaviness and no, maybe you're not still grieving like your sister is. And that's okay. But I felt guilty for years.
Yes.
Years. But I realize it now that he did that for me because of my desire, because I asked for it, because I prayed, because I was determined. And I knew that it was mine. Healing is the children's bread. It was like a healing, literally. And I felt like the grief was going to kill me, period. And so it took years for me to say, no, I'm strong in this. It took years just for me to say I'm strong. Years. I don't know what the guilt of that was. I had to get to a place where I had to say this, me God healing me and me getting to a place of saying, God, I don't want to deal with this heaviness anymore. I don't want to cry like this anymore. I don't want to this darkness anymore. I had to realize that's not related to me saying I love my mother like she loved her mother. I had to realize that it didn't say it was because of the relationship. I couldn't allow the judgment of others and what their opinions could have possibly been to affect what God had done for me.
Right, right. And I think the other thing about it is when you talk about how I had Sister Graham used to always say to me, she said, Sarita, you can always find something to feel guilty about. And it was like everything, you guilty, guilty, guilty.
Mom Graham.
You know, so she would always say that to me. And it wasn't until I was in counseling school and I was learning about temperament that there's an inborn temperament. This is how God created us. And certain temperaments have a tendency, if you're melancholy, it's like you can find a way to look at things sadly. And, you can, it's like, oh, I don't know. I don't trust this. I don't trust that. And, the different things. Supine, it's like, you're a servant. What can I do? But then when people don't acknowledge you, then you get all upset. And you call it hurt feelings, but you're really angry that you didn't acknowledge the fact that I've served you. I've done this, that. So when I came to realize my own temperament, it opened my eyes to why I felt the way I did on certain things, why I behaved a certain way. So it was like, oh my gosh, this is why I do it. So now once I realized that and I understood my temperament better, then when I started crossing over into that, what would be our weaknesses versus our strength, I started to realize, oh, wait a minute. Oh, no. We're not going back to that.
Right.
I live over here. I'm not trying to go back over to there. So it's like, no, I'm going to fight to stay where I am. No, I'm going to make a choice to live this way. So when all these, because I'm a thinker, my mind's always going. Now, if I think up, I'm up. If I think down, I'm down. So you know what? What does the Bible tell me? It says, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatever things are lovely, whatsoever things are pure,
Right.
if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Renew your mind, Zarita. You got to think differently. I had to think differently about myself. I didn't like myself because my grandmother always said that I was fat. I had a flat nose. I looked like my father, and he was like, the worst person in the world. One day, we're sitting at breakfast after church, eating pancakes, my favorite thing. And I'm just enjoying my pancakes. And all of a sudden, she said, Zari. And I turn and look. She had a hog head, a literal hog head with the teeth coming up. And she shoved in my face and said, that's your father. Now, needless to say, I was sick after that. But the image of who I was based on what they said. You're fat, you got a big butt, you got a flat nose, you got nappy hair, you got this thing. So I didn't have a good self-image. And it was for years and years and years later, I had to come to realize that, you know what? And I was on a plane one time coming from Oklahoma, I think. And the enemy was just bombarding me with all these negative thoughts about myself. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I'm not making a career of this. So it's like, just shut up. I'm not listening to you. And the Lord said to me, he said, I made you in my image and after my likeness. And it was what I needed, that, you know what? No matter what everybody and anybody else said about me, you love me, Daddy God. You made me the way you wanted me to be. And you said, now that's good. And I had to feel that that was good. So the journey of, all the things that impact you because all the stuff that's happened, you have to really fight to get away from it. And you got to make choices. You got to say, you know what, God, just like you were saying, Alexis, God, I need your help. I need you to help me. Help me walk through this. And it will bring you deeper. And everything in his word, when I was going through stuff, he would say, read this psalm or read that. And I had to come to trust that because, see, you just flip over your Bible and read whatever. But listen, I would pray and he would say, read such and such. And I go read it. And through the years, what happened was I realized that was him talking to me. And when I was going through stuff, listen, he would have it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's just what I needed, Lord. I was like, like I should be surprised,
Right.
So,
Dr. Zarita, you mentioned something about temperament, and I can't believe it, but we only have 5 minutes left. So I know that you have something related to temperament. Can we do that before we close for tonight? And I'm so sorry. I cannot believe we ran out of time like this. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm going to give you the floor.
okay.
And lead that.
Well, what were you talking about, the lipstick thing?
Yes.
Dealing with personality. Okay.
Yes.
That's a fun way of looking at how we do what we do. So ladies, if you wear lipstick, and
Go ahead,
you know,
Tanisha. Okay.
Okay. If you wear lipstick, every lady needs to. I work for Holiday Magic, and they said, you know what? You don't even empty your garbage without putting on your lipstick. So if you have lipstick, I want you to look at your lipstick, take it out, and look at it. And I want you to look at how it's worn, like how the shape of it is. Okay. And see if any of it matches what's on the screen right now. Okay. And if you see, you say, you know what, that looks like mine, A, B, C, D, F, G, H. All right. And if you see one that looks like yours, it says something about your personality. And you might say, what could that mean? You know, but let's see if you can relate. So ladies, if you saw it, now look on the screen now, and you can see each one of them has that shape that you just saw. Which one of them is you? Which one is your lipstick? What does your lipstick look like? Oh, my tongue is tied here. Which one looks like yours? Okay. And then read what it says about you and tell us if that, hey, is it true? Is it something you can relate to? And as you're doing that, when we look at our temperament, when I talk about temperament, I'm talking about melancholy, sanguine, choleric, supine, and all the temperaments, phlegmatic. Then that's determined who God created us to be. And when we can live and walk in our strengths, we will see those positive behaviors that help us to go, to go through things and to face things in a better way. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, and it doesn't mean that everything that comes at us, we're not going to, we're going to be able to handle, but it will help us to be able to do what we need to do in our life. So did you find something that matched? And if you did, and you read it, I'm curious to see what you found out about yourself on today. All right. So for mine, you see what it looks like. That's the shape of it. So hopefully you found something that was interesting for you. All right. I think mine was the one with the angle, sharp angle, creative, enthusiastic, energetic, talkative. Yeah, obviously. Loves attention, falls in love easily, helpful. All right. Okay, ladies.
Okay. I just want to show you guys my lipstick. It's very bright, right? This is my lipstick. Can you see it? So which one is, I think, am I the rounded, smooth tip? Am I easygoing, peacemaker, even tempered? I would like to be more even tempered and steady, likable, and generous. Yes, for the most part, that's me. Yep. And that's
right.
Lipstick. Yep, for the side.
There you go. So did any of our ladies find themselves in that?
Let's see. I'm looking. That was me. They said yes. Wow. Yes. Sharp angle tip for Lee.
Okay.
But that was me. That's our board member, Jeanette. Yep. Yes.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yes. Absolutely.
Awesome.
That's me too. Look, I have a lipstick sister that has the same lipstick as me.
Very good.
While those
Very
are
good.
popping up, I just wanted to share something that my amazing Pastor Mary, I have a pastor, I attend Abundant Life Family Worship Church in New Brunswick, where my bishop is Bishop George C. Wright, and my pastor is Pastor Mary. So, you know, we know Mom, we love Mom Graham. She's one of the mothers of our church as well. But she sent me something. She said, just an FYI, just because we carry it well doesn't mean that it's not heavy.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
Very much so.
Absolutely. But thank you, Dr. Zarita.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
This was so good, and I'm so happy that you shared with us tonight. You were amazing as always. You look beautiful in that yellow, by the way.
Florida. Yeah, thank you.
Sharing the thing with us about lipstick. Ladies, if the screen went down too fast, you can come back on our Facebook and look it up again to see your temperament style with your lipstick. We're going to say goodbye to Dr. Zarita for now. Thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome.
I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And